It's sometime in the late 30th millennium, and Ezekiel Abaddon, yes, that is how I will be pronouncing his name, the firstborn son of a mighty Chthonian warlord, is recruited into the Emperor's 16th Legion Astartes, led by the Emperor's favorite son, the great Horus Lupercal. Not only does Ezekiel survive the process of becoming a space marine, but he excels continuously, distinguishing himself on the training grounds of the Luna Wolves and on battlefields across the galaxy, rising quickly to the rank of First Company Captain. Outfitted with a custom suit of Terminator armor to accommodate his massive frame, Ezekiel dedicates himself entirely in his service to his gene father Horus and Horus's gene father, the great Emperor of Mankind. Now let's fast forward a little bit. It is the late 42nd millennium, 12,000 standard years later, and Abaddon the Despoiler, formerly known as Ezekiel Abaddon, now leads the combined forces of chaos on galactic crusades of his own, conquering, corrupting, and annihilating all those who stand in his way. His bloody wars, driven by hatred and rage against the Emperor and his shameless lies, have cost hundreds of billions, if not trillions, of human lives. As Abaddon brutally tears his path through the galaxy, wielding the talon of Horus in one hand and the demon sword Drach'nyen in the other, he has only one goal: to finally accomplish what his gene father could not. So, how exactly, during those 12,000 years, did the once loyal and honorable Ezekiel Abaddon become the greatest villain in the galaxy and the greatest threat to the existence of the Imperium? Well, that is the subject of today's video. And if you end up enjoying it, let me know by either leaving a like or a comment. It helps my tiny channel out more than you know, and if you really want to help, you can share this video with 437 of your closest friends and family. Thanks. Let's start at the beginning. Ezekiel Abaddon was born on the planet of Chthoniya, a world that could be reached from the Sol system even with sub-light speed means of transportation. This meant that the planet had long ago been stripped of its resources to the point that it was really an empty husk of what once was a planet. From the surface all the way down to its core, Chthoniya had nothing left for the people unfortunate enough to live there to survive on, and thus the entire population was essentially broken up into warring factions, fighting over scarce food, water, and territory. Now, Abaddon was born into about as good of a situation as one could be as a Chthonian, as he was the firstborn son of Tarcharodon, one of the planet's mightiest warlords. But during a coming-of-age ceremony that went just a little tiny bit wrong, Ezekiel killed his father. And after being exiled from the gang, he spent some time simply trying to survive while fending off attacks from rival Chthonian gangs. Luckily, he was soon thereafter discovered by the 16th Legion, at the time called the Luna Wolves, and was taken from Chthoniya to Luna, the moon, to undergo the arduous process of becoming a space marine. In his first meeting on Chthoniya with the members of the Luna Wolves who discovered him, Hastur Sejanus and Siracul, who also happened to be at the time part of the Mournival, more on that later, Ezekiel explained to them that unlike his bloodthirsty warlord father, he had never wanted to be a king. Which is funny, because that's the most 40k thing possible, being destined to become the one exact thing you have sworn to yourself that you would never become. God Emperor, anybody? Now, as I mentioned earlier, Ezekiel was not destined to become just any old space marine. He rose quickly through the ranks of the Luna Wolves, achieving the rank of First Company Captain within a short number of years. His reputation preceded him, and he became known as a great warrior, not just within the confines of his legion, but amongst the Astartes of other legions as well. Additionally, the Luna Wolves, rather uniquely, had something called the Mournival in their legion. The Mournival was a truly elite brotherhood within the brotherhood that was the Luna Wolves. Now keep in mind that the Luna Wolves comprised some 100,000 Astartes at that time. The Mournival comprised 4. Horus, the Primarch of the Luna Wolves, valued the opinions of the warriors in the Mournival and treated them as his personal advisors, and thus each member would be chosen based not only on his outstanding merit as a warrior, but also on his intelligence on all things related to, fighting aliens and blowing up planets and conquering the galaxy. And so, Ezekiel not only found himself in the venerable position of First Company Captain, he also found himself in the Mournival as one of its founding members, alongside the previously mentioned Hastur Sejanus and Siracul, as well as Second Company Captain Tarek Torgadon. During the early days of the Great Crusade, Cyril would fall in battle and be replaced by Horus Aximand, and Sejanus would be murdered during negotiations for a planetary capitulation to the Luna Wolves and be replaced by Garviel Loken, who I will definitely be making a video about soon because he's fucking awesome. So stay tuned for that. Anyways, everything was looking good for Ezekiel for a few good years. I think it's important to note as well that in 40k, the time scale and frankly the scale of everything is a little bit weird because right now we're talking about a bunch of guys leaving Earth and trying to conquer the entire galaxy, which is crazy. So literally years can go by and not much can change, which is more or less what happened here. Quite a few years went by, actually, and the Luna Wolves journeyed from planetary system to planetary system under the command of their big, beautiful, bald Papa Horus, and they killed a shitload of aliens and also a shitload of people, as they do. And now this brings us to the early years of the 31st millennium, where something kind of important in 40k lore happened. Now, I don't know if you've heard about it, but Horus kind of did this thing where he got sort of a little bit corrupted by the evil gods of a parallel dimension, and then allowed them to channel their infinite rage and hatred for his father, the Emperor, directly through his soul and body. And he basically went insane and tried to kill literally everyone and everything in the galaxy. Some of you really hardcore fans might have heard about this event. They call it the Horus Heresy. And that was me being sarcastic. Obviously, we all know about it. I'm not going to go super in-depth into the heresy in this video because there are tons of other great videos on the topic on YouTube already, and I could literally spend like 2 hours talking about it, and I don't want to edit 2 hours worth of video, and you're not here to learn about the Horus Heresy, you're here to learn about Abaddon, so yeah. I will do a synopsis though. Horus gets stabbed with an evil sword by a super nasty guy. Like, I'm talking absolutely disgusting. He's all green and bloated and stinky and nasty. And then Horus defeats him, and the guy basically says, "Oh my god, Horus, you're not going to believe this. I got corrupted by a god of chaos, and I thought I was super cool and immortal, but now my connection to that god, who by the way is literally the god of rot and pestilence and disease and decay, has been severed, and now I'm just this disgusting, disease-ridden mess, and I hate myself, and I feel really shitty, and now my soul is owned by this evil god in another dimension, and please don't make the same mistake I just did." And then Horus goes into a coma, and immediately makes the same exact mistake that guy did. But instead of just pledging his allegiance to one dark god, he pledges it to all 4 of them. Great job, Horus! Then, Horus tries to get other legions, there's 18 of them, to join his side, and starts killing the Astartes of the legions who refuse to join him. He eventually gets 8 other legions on his side, making it an even 9v9, and starts to make his way towards Terra to fight his dad. A bunch of stuff happens, and then he gets to Terra, and even more stuff happens, and then he fights his dad, and he stabs his dad really bad, a lot, and even breaks his back, but then his dad stabs him, I think, and also unleashes a beam of pure warp energy on him that is so strong that it brings him to the very brink of death, and guess what? Just like the stinky-ass sword guy who stabbed him, Horus has his connection to the warp severed, and he's all of a sudden like, ooh, shit. Oh, did I do this? Oh man, this is this is bad. I'm not proud of myself here. This is I'll be honest, I think I f***ed up. Hey, Dad, this whole thing was so crazy. Like, oh my god. Can you forgive me, please? And the Emperor was like, what? No. And shattered Horus's soul into billions of pieces, destroying the very essence of his being and ensuring that the heresy came to an end. And while all this was happening, the Mournival, composed of Ezekiel, Tarek Torgadon, Horus Aximand, and Garviel Loken, much like the 18 legions, also split in 2 halves, with Tarek and Garviel siding with the Imperium, and Ezekiel and Horus Aximand siding with their Gene Father. As we know, the Emperor was mortally wounded in the battle with Horus, and so he was quickly taken from Horus's ship where the fight took place back to Terra to be interred on the Golden Throne. All the other Imperial forces on the ship also left, as there was a massive effort now underway to kill as many of the retreating traitor forces as possible, and Ezekiel was able to make his way to Horus's dead body, retrieving it and joining his fellow traitors in their retreat to the Eye of Terror, a massive warp storm that had resulted from the birth of the chaos god Slaanesh. And it is now at this point in the video that we are no longer talking about Ezekiel Abaddon, the Chthonian outcast who rose through the ranks of the Luna Wolves, who became a captain, a member of the elite Mournival, one of the most respected warriors of the Imperium during the entirety of the Great Crusade, who idolized his gene father Horus Lupercal above any and all others. No, we are now talking about Abaddon, the Despoiler. From this point on, Abaddon was set on a new path, a path that would see him rise to new heights, to a place of power so high that he would set his sights on the same opponent as the gods of chaos themselves, the Emperor of mankind. And he would set for himself a goal as lofty as any that had ever been set in the history of the galaxy: the complete annihilation of the Imperium of Man and the establishment of a new empire, with Abaddon, who, remember, had never wanted to be a king, as its king. Following Horus's death at the hands of the Emperor, the 16th Legion, which had been renamed from the Luna Wolves to the Sons of Horus, found itself having, believe it or not, a bit of an identity crisis. They managed to reach the Eye of Terror, though they quickly found themselves having to deal with ambushes and double crossings by their fellow traitor legions, who had literally just been their allies. Such is the way when chaos is invited in. Legions that were built to last millennia would just fracture into bickering warbands who looked to the warp gods for power and control over their former brothers and fellow Astartes warriors. And in the face of this, Abaddon abandoned his legion, plummeting further into the Eye of Terror. He wasn't interested in giving over his soul for cheap and easy power, risking possession, or having his very essence consumed by one of the endlessly ravenous gods of the warp. No, Abaddon was a warrior, and though he was now branded by the Imperium as a traitor, a heretic of the highest order, he saw things a little differently. See, Abaddon saw the Emperor for what he truly was. Although the Emperor had spent millennia ruthlessly waging war on religion, especially religions that were built around him, and championing a rigorous adherence to science, Abaddon knew that the Emperor was not only far more powerful than he let on, but that he was in fact on a power level rival to that of the incomprehensible gods of chaos. And even beyond that, Abaddon felt that the Emperor was the one acting heretically, as he had spent thousands of years blatantly lying to the quadrillions of human souls around the galaxy about the true scope of his power and about who he truly was. And to be honest, Abaddon was kind of cooking when he realized this. Unbeknownst to anyone other than a small handful of individuals, once upon a time the Emperor had journeyed into the warp. He had communed with the gods of chaos and had bartered with them for the knowledge to create his Primarch sons. The Primarchs weren't just made with enhanced biological engineering, they were literally all part warp magic. And, believe it or not, the Emperor wasn't just some 14-foot-tall, 38,000-year-old golden armor-clad science nerd. He was actually a psychic being. Oh my god, what? No way! Who used his psychic powers to stay alive for 38,000 years and to do all kinds of other crazy stuff, like astrally project himself across the galaxy, or power the Astronomicon and use his practically infinite psychic powers to literally shine a homing beacon that could be seen by psychically gifted navigators up to 70,000 light years away. So, yeah, not just a scientist. He was kind of a big deal. Anyways, after walking the surfaces of 1,000 planets and exploring every corner and crevice of the maddening Eye of Terror, Abaddon realized what the future would hold for him. He began to assemble a new group of warriors, recruiting them away from their bickering warbands with the promise of something greater, a new brotherhood and a new purpose. And even though Abaddon and all the traitorous Astartes he had begun to assemble were no longer loyal to the Imperium that created them, they were still genetically programmed to crave the bonds of brotherhood, and they had been purpose-built for one thing: to wage war and to claim victory against their foes. And as it turned out, it didn't really matter who those foes were. So Abaddon proposed to his newly gathered Chaos Marines a vision, the beginning of a new war, not a simple rebellion with the goal of toppling the Emperor, but a war for the control of the future of humankind. In Abaddon's mind, and again, I'll be honest, I think he was cooking here, Horus had become so corrupted by the influence of chaos that he would have given all of humanity over to the gods of the warp to simply cement his position on the golden throne, no matter how fleeting a moment it would turn out to be. Abaddon shared a hatred for the Emperor and a desire to subjugate the Imperium just as the Chaos Gods did, but beyond that, he held no real desire to accept the power they offered, as he felt to do so was a move of weakness and cowardice. It is also revealed in this line of thinking that Abaddon had clearly finally lost all love for his gene father. No longer did he view Horus as the ultimate tactician, as the great leader of a great legion, as the rightful ruler of the Imperium. Abaddon now saw Horus as a sad, weak man who had allowed himself to be tricked into giving himself over completely to the whims of the Chaos Gods. Not only had Horus fallen for their tricks and deceit, he basically took a huge running jump off the idiot cliff. That's a new metaphor I'm working on. I think it still needs work. I don't know. Let me know. Now, speaking of Abaddon's gene father, let's look at Abaddon and his Astartes' first team-up and their fun little excursion to the demon world of Harmony, which, by the way, is a super misleading name for a planet that is literally known as a demon world. Like, hey, we're going to go to this planet called Harmony. Oh, great. That sounds fun. Do they have lots of orchards and meadows there? Maybe some beaches? No, but they do have a lot of disfigured, disgusting, mutated, demonic monstrosities prowling around. Abaddon was leading his newly assembled warriors to the city of Scalathrax, which had become a base of sorts for the Emperor's children, who, by the way, I kind of forgot to mention this, had stolen Horus's corpse a couple centuries earlier, and were trying to clone him. Long story short, Abaddon and his Astartes arrived in orbit above Scalathrax aboard their flagship, the Vengeful Spirit, and started unleashing hell. In mere minutes, the city was destroyed and the entire planet was reacting to the vicious assault with planetary earthquakes that could be felt across the world. Enemy vessels began to launch into the skies above Scalathrax, fleeing the destruction below, and upon seeing the ship he was looking for, Abaddon ordered his brothers to cease fire and prepare to board the vessel. Having boarded, Abaddon and his party made quick work of clearing the ship, slaughtering their way through grotesque demonic mutants and Emperor's children Astartes warriors. Eventually, they arrived at the laboratory of Fabius Bile, the chief apothecary of the Emperor's children, who would become more widely known throughout the darkest corners of the galaxy as the Clone Lord. What Abaddon and his warriors saw in this laboratory brought them to a screeching halt. These men, many of whom were twisted beyond all saving by the insanity of the warp, found themselves at a loss at what they were seeing. They had believed that the Emperor's children were likely centuries away from perfecting their cloning techniques, but laying in front of them were hundreds of life pods, each pod containing a mutated child or a deformed adolescent. And these weren't just humans. They were clones of the Primarchs themselves. Indeed, the Emperor's children, or more specifically, the Clone Lord, had seemingly succeeded a few hundred years ahead of schedule. Thus, Abaddon ordered the tanks to be destroyed, leaving no chance of Fabius Bile's disgusting creations being left to live. But the Clone Lord himself, who had appeared from an adjoining chamber to confront the warriors, took notice of Abaddon's right hand, upon which was fitted the talon of Horus, still bearing the deaths of the Emperor and the Primarch Sanguinius upon it, and simply stated, "He will enjoy the irony of that." And Abaddon was all like, "What are you talking about, Fabius Bile?" And then he found out pretty quick, because behind Bile emerged a hulking figure. It was a clone of Horus Lupercal himself, cloned directly from the dead flesh harvested from his stasis-preserved corpse after the Emperor's children made off with it. And oh boy, was he angry. Horus unleashed the unfiltered rage of a demigod upon Abaddon's Astartes in front of him, tearing them apart one by one. Abaddon, however, moved behind Horus, and with a single word, he brought the Primarch clone's berserker rage to a halt. "Enough," he said, without even raising his voice. Horus turned in an instant, whipping his battle maul around Abaddon, his intended target. Abaddon caught the maul within the talon of Horus and closed his fist. The maul shattered, and staring into his eyes, Horus finally left his raging state, and a look of recognition came across his face. "Ezekiel," he said, "my son." And remember when I said this wasn't Ezekiel anymore? Oh, I really meant it. Because Abaddon thrust his fist forward and the talon of Horus tore through his chest. He then fired 6 bolter rounds that were each blessed with blood sacrifices to the dark gods. Oh, did I forget to mention that the Talon of Horus also contains a built-in combi bolter that fires rounds that have been blessed with blood sacrifices to the dark gods into Horus's chest, which, in the interest of monetization, we will just say led to him no longer being alive. Abaddon removed the Talon from clone Horus's body, and just before it fell to the floor, Abaddon leaned in and whispered in his ear, "I am not your son." Now, Abaddon wasted very little time after he had finished dispatching the clone of Horus. Divisions within his home legion of the Sons of Horus sickened him, and he hunted down the numerous captains of the legion who had been responsible for its ceaseless infighting. Having found and dispatched them all, Abaddon alone remained and demanded loyalty from his legionary brothers. He had the warriors of what was now his legion discard the armor colorings that they had adhered to as the Sons of Horus, and dictated that they all paint their Viridian power armor black. Finally, the Sons of Horus moniker, much like their gene father, was no more. From then on, Abaddon's warriors would be known as the Black Legion. And in the thousands of standard years following the founding of the Black Legion, Abaddon has launched no less than 13 attacks on Imperial space, known to us 40k fans as Black Crusades. During the first Black Crusade, Abaddon was able to recover the demon sword Drach'nyen, which he now uses in battle. Each crusade that he has launched since has seen him prove victorious over a powerful foe or claim a valuable relic for his own exploit, or both. Abaddon's 12th Black Crusade, in which he aimed to capture the ancient Necron-constructed weapons known as Blackstone Fortresses, was only partially successful, after having been thwarted by the forging of a desperate alliance between the Aldari and the Imperium of Man. Now, I want to make this clear. You're going to hear a lot of people say, well, Abaddon has done 13 Black Crusades and the Imperium is still standing. He's an idiot. He keeps losing. Well, kinda. But also, Abaddon has his own secret goals in every single crusade that he goes on. So even though he always ends up being banished back to the warp, or something horrible happens and he's thwarted or embarrassed in some way, whatever, he still is always accomplishing at least some goal that he has set out to accomplish. Now, with that being said, the High Lords of Terra, the leaders of the 12 most powerful organizations within the Imperium, who are thus granted a seat on the council that leads the entire Imperium, are so far very pleased that humanity has been able to repel each of Abaddon's crusades, stopping him each time before he can reach the coveted Golden Throne. As epic as Abaddon's defeats may be, the High Lords, much like many fans, are perhaps unaware that every crusade is simply viewed by Abaddon as another piece of groundwork to lay out in his unceasing quest to construct a path of destruction leading straight to the foot of the Golden Throne. And with that being said, Abaddon's greatest crusade so far is also his most recent. The infamous 13th Black Crusade saw Abaddon personally unite all the forces of chaos, either offering prized chaos relics recovered on previous crusades to the demon primarchs Mortarion and Angron in exchange for their participation, or bartering otherwise with the demon primarchs Magnus the Red and Fulgrim. Decades of preparation culminated in Abaddon controlling the combined forces of all 4 chaos gods under his leadership in the year 999 M41. And allowed him to launch the greatest attack on the Imperium of Man since the Horus Heresy 12,000 standard years earlier. The fortress world of Cadia, located in Imperial space but existing dangerously close to the Eye of Terror, housed the Necron-tier constructed Cadian pylons, powerful defenses that held the expansion of the Eye of Terror at bay. Well, Abaddon destroyed Cadia, and with its fall, the pathway from the Eye of Terror to the remainder of Imperial space is now at risk of falling to Abaddon and the powers of chaos undivided. Abaddon's current goal with his ongoing Black Crusade is to build upon his great victory at Cadia, leading his Chaos Marines and limitless demon hordes further and further from the safety of the Eye of Terror and into the non-very demon-friendly environment of real space, on a direct course towards the Sol System, Terra, and the Golden Throne. And that is where the Imperium finds itself in the current canon. This is literally all happening right now in 40k lore. As 40k, of course, wouldn't be 40k without everything going wrong all at once. Let's do a quick recap of all that is happening in universe. Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade is going great for haters of the Imperium. Ugh. Couldn't be me. The extremely space racist and genocidal Necrons are waking up from a 60 million year slumber. The Aldari are all still being douchey, arrogant idiots. And also, Enid, the Aldari god of the dead, who is prophesized to one day destroy the gods of chaos, is slowly awakening within the warp. So that's kind of important. The Tyranids are destroying everything in their path and being very rude about it. The Leagues of Voltan are being very cute and small and just the best. The Tau are, And the Orcs are Tokyo drifting their giant flying piles of trash through the vacuum of space with the windows down because they don't realize that they can't breathe nothing. And of course, most importantly, the Golden Throne is failing. You know, that thing that keeps the Emperor from completely disintegrating and becoming one with the warp, which would lead to the Webway Gate below the Imperial Palace to start acting as a 500-lane super express freeway for demon hordes to invade Terra and completely annihilate it and destroy the entire Imperium of Man as we know it? Yep, can't forget that. So while Abaddon does still have his work cut out for him, things are looking a lot worse for the Imperium than they are for him. Now, I want to finish this video out with a little piece of personal appreciation for the character of Abaddon the Despoiler. During the Imperium's rule over the galaxy, countless billions, maybe even trillions of living beings have fallen to the temptations of chaos. It is literally irresistible for everyone. Literally, if you are alive and become tempted by chaos, you will eventually fall to it. Unless you are one guy. And that is Abaddon. He is him. Although he fights alongside the powers of chaos and holds the same common enemy, he has not once allowed himself to make the same mistake as many of his current allies. Magnus the Red gave himself to Tzeentch, Angron gave himself to Khorne, Mortarion gave himself to Nurgle, and Fulgrim gave himself to Slaanesh. Other Primarchs have accepted gifts from the Dark Gods and thus damned themselves, losing ownership of their own souls in exchange for easy power as well. Abaddon has spent 12,000 years being offered gifts from the gods of chaos, and he has turned them down every single time. He barters, he trades, he makes deals with the gods, but never does he do anything so foolish as accepting their gifts. For he knows that the price of doing so would be their eternal ownership over him. They have even offered him literal immortality, a guarantee that if he were to die on Crusade, they would resurrect him and allow him to continue his fight for eternity. Of course, he said no. He would rather risk death, real death, and know that there is no second chance. And that is, in my opinion, pretty incredible, honestly. Although Abaddon the Despoiler is a heartless, quite frankly, absolutely terrifying character, you can't say that he isn't principled. And somehow, when we look at the Emperor, who spent nearly 40 millennia living as a hypocrite, and we look at the Imperium of Mankind, a galactic organization that on a daily basis contradicts and double crosses its own laws and teaching on a scale that is incomprehensible, the fact that an enemy of humankind such as Abaddon exists is very fitting. He may somehow be the most morally adherent person in the galaxy. Well, that is, if your moral code includes literally brewing alcohol with the corpses of demons. And that is something that Abaddon does. You know what? Maybe he is a pretty bad guy. I don't know. Anyway, if you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and let me know what you thought by leaving a comment. If you really liked it, sub to my channel for more 40k content. And of course, let me know what you want to see next. See you next time.